They laughed when I lost everything, but my quiet comeback left them begging for mercy. The air in the grand ballroom was thick, almost viscous, with the cloying scent of Zephyr's triumph and the sharp tang of expensive champagne. 1,000 faces, illuminated by the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, turned towards Zephyr, their expressions a mixture of awe, envy, and eager sycophancy. He stood on a raised dais, bathed in the blinding glare of spotlights, a figure of absolute power, a titan of industry. His laughter boomed, deep and resonant, a sound that once held the echo of shared dreams, a hint of camaraderie from a time long past. Now, it was a harsh, unvarnished sound, brimming only with malice and unbridled arrogance. To the future, he declared, his voice cutting through the celebratory din like a finely sharpened blade. His gaze swept over the adoring crowd, pausing, lingering, finally resting on the quiet figure at the periphery. A small, sardonic smile played on his lips, a cruel twist that spoke volumes. And to the past, he added, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the vast hall, which, as we all know, is firmly behind us. The implication was clear, brutally so. He was celebrating. Celebrating a downfall, an utter ruin, the culmination of his meticulously orchestrated betrayal. The man stood, a forgotten ghost amidst the revelry, the vibrant pulse of Zephyr's victory party a jarring contrast to the quiet stillness that enveloped him. He felt the weight of their whispers, hushed yet sharp as daggers, piercing through the ambient noise. Finished. Destroyed. A cautionary tale. They saw a man stripped of everything, fortune, reputation, dignity. They saw defeat in his quiet demeanor, in his seemingly vacant stare that looked out but rarely registered the shallow spectacle before him. His hands, though still, bore the faint tremors of a past storm, but his eyes, deep and unblinking, held a distant fire. Yet, they were blind. Utterly, catastrophically blind to the silent storm brewing within him, to the meticulous gears turning behind his impassive eyes. They couldn't perceive the strategic brilliance Zephyr had so catastrophically underestimated, seeing only the surface, never the depths. Zephyr's triumphant laughter, a harsh symphony of his ascendancy, reached his ears, not as a knell of defeat, but as a mere overture to a far grander, more devastating performance. They thought it was over. His very silence, his retreat from the public eye, had been misinterpreted as surrender, as despair. They couldn't have been more wrong. That night, he wasn't losing, he was merely setting the stage. His silence wasn't surrender, it was a promise. A silent, unyielding promise that true power wasn't found in what one acquired, but in what one could meticulously rebuild from the ashes. Zephyr's moment of glory, his fragile edifice of ill-gotten gains, shimmered precariously, and the man, unseen, unheard, was already laying the charges that would bring it all crashing down. His journey to that echoing ballroom, to the periphery of Zephyr's ill-gotten empire, had been a long, winding path, paved with ambition, sacrifice, and ultimately, a profound, if bitter, education in human nature. From a young age, even before he could fully articulate the concept, he had been captivated by the intricate logic of systems, the elegant dance of code, the boundless potential of technology to reshape the world. His earliest memories were of dismantling old radios, not just to break them, but to understand their inner workings, the way circuits hummed and signals intertwined. Later, it was the thrill of a perfectly optimized algorithm, the satisfaction of a complex problem yielding to a simple, elegant solution. He poured his soul into his work, sacrificing countless nights to the glowing screen of his monitor, forgoing the easy comforts of a conventional life, all for the singular, burning vision of building something truly transformative. His company wasn't just a business venture, it was an extension of his very being, a testament to years of relentless dedication and unwavering belief. Every line of code, every design iteration, was a personal expression, a piece of his heart poured into the digital ether. He lived and breathed the innovation he sought to bring to the world. Then came Zephyr. The man first encountered him at a modest industry mixer, years before Zephyr became the architect of his public humiliation. The venue was a repurposed warehouse, smelling faintly of stale beer and ambition, filled with the hopeful buzz of fledgling startups. Zephyr moved through the crowd with an effortless charm, his smile radiating an infectious energy that, even then, masked a calculating, almost predatory mind. His handshake was firm, his gaze direct and engaging. At first, the man saw him as a kindred spirit, someone who genuinely shared his passion for innovation, someone who could help scale his burgeoning vision, freeing him from the arduous task of public relations and fundraising. Zephyr was skilled in presentation, in networking, in articulating the why, while the man focused intently on the how. They seemed to complement each other perfectly, the quiet architect, meticulously crafting the future in solitude, and the boisterous salesman, effortlessly charming investors and clients. Their partnership blossomed, and with it, the company soared. They built a groundbreaking tech firm, one that genuinely promised to redefine an entire industry, a testament to the man's profound technical insights and Zephyr's undeniable market savvy. He entrusted Zephyr with the public face of the company, the intricate financial dealings, the strategic partnerships, while he himself remained immersed in the research and development, refining the core technology that was their competitive edge. His loyalty was absolute, his trust, profound and seemingly unshakable. He believed in the shared dream. But even then, faint, dissonant notes began to emerge in their symphony, subtle at first, easily dismissed. A subtle shift in Zephyr's gaze when discussing certain financial matters, a fleeting shadow of avarice that quickly vanished behind a reassuring smile. A casual dismissal of the man's ethical concerns regarding aggressive marketing tactics or the boundaries of data privacy, brushed aside as the cost of doing business. A sudden, almost possessive grip on client relationships, Zephyr subtly steering key conversations away from the man, limiting his direct interaction with major stakeholders. These were subtle tremors, easily dismissed as the growing pains of a rapidly expanding enterprise, the inevitable friction of two strong personalities. Yet, his analytical mind, ever attuned to patterns, to anomalies in the system, began to register them. It wasn't paranoia that stirred within him, but a cold, logical assessment of evolving data points. He started to quietly, almost unconsciously, build mental redundancies, digital fail-safes. He kept detailed personal logs, not out of suspicion initially, but out of a deep-seated professional habit of thorough documentation, a meticulous record of every meeting, every decision, every line of code. He diversified his knowledge, subtly learning the nuances of corporate law in his spare evenings, understanding the intricate web of financial structures, not because he anticipated betrayal, but because knowledge was, to him, the ultimate form of self-reliance, an armor against the unpredictable. His true, secret weapon, as he would later understand, wasn't a single piece of hidden information or a complex hacking tool, but this ingrained habit of foresight, of understanding potential vulnerabilities before they materialized, of preparing for eventualities before they fully bloomed into crises. He knew, intuitively, from his deep study of complex systems, that the most dangerous threats were often those that came from within, cloaked in familiarity and trust, like a Trojan horse within one's own gates. This wasn't paranoia, it was a cold, pragmatic assessment of human nature, informed by years of dissecting intricate codes and predicting potential system failures. He prepared not for a direct attack, but for the possibility of having to rebuild from scratch, should the foundation ever crumble. And crumble it did. Zephyr's betrayal was swift, surgical, executed with a cruel precision that belied his boisterous public persona. He exploited every legal loophole, every shared secret, every public vulnerability the man had unwittingly created through his trust. He orchestrated a smear campaign that painted him as incompetent, naive, and ultimately, unfit to lead, releasing carefully doctored emails and leaked internal memos designed to twist facts into damning narratives. He stripped the man bare, leaving him with nothing but the quiet hum of his own thoughts, the stark reality of public ridicule, and the heavy weight of a life's work stolen. But Zephyr hadn't stolen his mind, nor his capacity to think, to plan, to rebuild. He had merely provided him with a stark, undeniable blank canvas upon which to paint his true masterpiece, a new vision forged in the fires of adversity. The immediate aftermath of Zephyr's betrayal was a descent into a kind of public purgatory. The headlines screamed his name, but not in praise, rather as a pariah, a cautionary tale for aspiring innovators. Social media feeds buzzed with venom, a digital mob reveling in his perceived downfall. Former colleagues and friends, the very people he had mentored and celebrated with, offered a perplexing mix of pity, scorn, and, most painfully, awkward silence, avoiding his gaze, averting their steps. His company, his life's work, was now Zephyr's, rebranded, repackaged, and presented as the singular genius of the usurper. He lost everything: his spacious home, meticulously furnished with the trappings of success, his carefully accumulated savings, his standing in an industry he had helped define. He became a pariah, the very definition of a washed-up tech visionary. It was a period of profound quiet, a forced isolation that, paradoxically, offered him an unprecedented clarity. He had no distractions, no public obligations, no need to maintain a facade for investors or the press. It was just him, the wreckage of his past, and the cold, hard logic of rebuilding. While the world believed he was wallowing in despair, perhaps even contemplating a complete exit from the public eye, he was doing precisely the opposite. His small, rented room, sparse and impersonal, became his command center. He sat for hours, sometimes days, meticulously analyzing Zephyr's every public move, every strategic decision, every pronouncement. He studied Zephyr's press conferences, listened to his interviews, parsed his company's quarterly reports. Zephyr, he observed, was a creature of habit, driven by an insatiable ego and a superficial understanding of true innovation. He reveled in the spotlight, in the grand gestures, in the perception of power. He saw the man's silence, his retreat from the public eye, as definitive confirmation of his victory, as irrefutable proof of his weakness. This, the man knew, was Zephyr's greatest miscalculation. His quietude was not the stillness of defeat, but the focused calm of a predator biding its time, observing its prey's every tell, every vulnerability. He began to work in the shadows, not on a grand, public stage, but in the quiet solitude of his rented room, the hum of his old laptop his only companion. His new project wasn't about building a bigger, flashier version of what Zephyr had stolen. It was about creating something fundamentally different, something that leveraged the very weaknesses inherent in Zephyr's acquisition. Zephyr had taken the shell of the company, its brand, its market share, but he hadn't understood its soul, its underlying philosophy. The man's new venture was built on principles of true decentralization, of radical open-source collaboration, and a profound, almost spiritual, respect for user privacy. Concepts Zephyr, driven by centralized profit and absolute control, would never fully grasp. He wasn't trying to outcompete Zephyr on his terms. He was changing the very game itself, shifting the entire paradigm. His resources were almost non-existent. His capital was purely intellectual, his currency was trust, earned through a lifetime of integrity. He reached out to a handful of individuals he knew possessed true integrity and genuine technical brilliance, people who, like him, valued substance over superficial showmanship. They were a diverse, eclectic group: Alara, a brilliant, disillusioned cryptographer who felt her groundbreaking work was being misused by corporate giants for surveillance; Kale, a quiet but exceptionally skilled data scientist, whose unwavering belief in ethical data handling had alienated him from most mainstream tech firms; and Lena, a former venture capitalist who had grown weary of the hype cycle and truly sought to invest in meaningful, impactful innovation, even if it wasn't immediately profitable. He didn't offer them riches or lavish promises. He offered them a vision, a chance to build something truly impactful, free from the corporate greed and ethical compromises that had consumed his past. They saw not a broken man, but a calm, determined architect with a clear, compelling blueprint, a quiet fire in his eyes that spoke of unyielding resolve. Their work was painstaking, methodical, a slow, deliberate ascent. They operated with absolute discretion, communicating through layers of encrypted channels, meeting in nondescript cafes or forgotten park benches, their digital footprints carefully erased. Zephyr, meanwhile, grew increasingly arrogant, blinded by his own perceived success. He overextended his reach, making public pronouncements that bordered on reckless, promising impossible features and unrealistic timelines. He acquired smaller companies, not for their innovation, but purely to absorb their market share, leaving a trail of broken promises, disillusioned employees, and gutted intellectual property. He focused obsessively on short-term gains, on public perception, on quarterly reports, neglecting the foundational research and development that had once been the lifeblood of the original company. He was building an empire on sand, a colossal, unstable structure, and the man, brick by quiet brick, was building a new, unshakable foundation just beneath Zephyr's unsuspecting feet. While the world saw him tinkering in obscurity, they failed to realize he was assembling the very gears of their future, gears that would soon grind Zephyr's entire operation to a halt. Every step Zephyr took, every miscalculation, every public misstatement, was merely a note in the man's growing symphony of his inevitable downfall. He was not reacting to Zephyr, he was anticipating him, laying traps Zephyr would unwittingly walk into, all while Zephyr remained blissfully unaware, lost in the echo chamber of his own inflated ego, convinced of his unassailable position. The day of Zephyr's grand unveiling arrived with an almost theatrical flair, a spectacle worthy of a Roman emperor. He had rented the city's most opulent convention center for the 10th anniversary of what he now brazenly called his company, an event designed solely to celebrate his supposed genius and launch his latest flagship product. The vast auditorium thrummed with anticipation, filled with industry titans, eager investors, and a skeptical but curious media contingent. Zephyr, resplendent in a tailored suit that shimmered under the stage lights, strode onto the stage, a predatory grin plastered across his face, ready to bask in the adulation of his assembled court. He began his speech, a masterclass in self-congratulation, detailing his vision, his conquests, his audacious plans for world domination, subtly weaving in veiled jabs at the man's past failures, his supposed lack of foresight, his quaint adherence to outdated ethical principles. As Zephyr reached the crescendo of his presentation, his voice resonating with false confidence, ready to unveil his much-hyped, next-generation product, the man made his entrance. He didn't burst through the doors in a dramatic flourish or interrupt Zephyr's speech with a shout. He simply walked in, calmly, from a side entrance near the back, taking a seat in the last row, a quiet, almost unnoticed presence in the vast hall. His appearance caused a subtle ripple, a few whispers, heads turning momentarily, but most were too engrossed in Zephyr's performance, too captivated by the spectacle, to pay much mind. Zephyr himself glanced his way, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, quickly replaced by a dismissive sneer, confident that the man's presence was merely a desperate attempt to cling to relevance, a pathetic ghost haunting his own funeral. Zephyr continued, oblivious to the true nature of the storm gathering around him, as the large screen behind him, dominating the stage, prepared to display his new product. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zephyr boomed, his voice echoing through the massive arena, "I present to you, the future of connectivity." At that precise moment, a subtle shift occurred. The giant screen behind him, meant to display his company's sleek, new logo, flickered. Then, it didn't just display Zephyr's logo, it displayed the man's new company's logo, crisp, elegant, and entirely unexpected, glowing with an almost ethereal light. A collective gasp, sharp and sudden, rippled through the audience, a wave of confusion and disbelief. Zephyr froze mid-sentence, his triumphant smile dissolving into a mask of utter bewilderment, his eyes wide with dawning horror. Before he could react, before his security detail could even comprehend what was happening, the man's voice, calm and clear, amplified through the arena's sophisticated sound system, cut through the stunned silence, every word deliberate and precise. "Correction, Zephyr," the man began, rising slowly from his seat in the back row, every eye in the vast auditorium now fixed on him, drawn by the quiet power of his voice. His tone was measured, devoid of anger, simply stating a fact, an undeniable truth. "You're about to present a rehashed version of technology this man began developing years ago, its true potential stifled by your greed. But the true future of connectivity, the one that prioritizes privacy, decentralization, and genuine user empowerment, is already here. And it's not yours." On the screen, his company's new interface materialized, fluid and intuitive, demonstrating real-time capabilities that fundamentally outstripped anything Zephyr was about to present. It was not just a competitor, it was a paradigm shift, a disruptive force that rendered Zephyr's entire business model obsolete before he even launched. And then, the man played his final, devastating hand. For those interested in the details of how this paradigm shift came about, he continued, his gaze fixed squarely on Zephyr, who was now visibly trembling, his face pale with dawning horror, sweat beading on his forehead. This man has uploaded a comprehensive, forensically verified dataset to a secure, immutable distributed ledger. It details not just the genesis of this new technology, but also the full, unredacted history of the original intellectual property, the source code ownership, and the financial discrepancies that led to its unlawful acquisition. A QR code, stark and undeniable, flashed on the screen, linking directly to the dataset. A murmur erupted, quickly followed by the frantic tapping of phones as people, driven by an insatiable curiosity, scanned the code. The silence returned, but this time, it was pregnant with dread for Zephyr, a palpable tension. The man hadn't brought mere accusations, he had brought irrefutable, public proof. The data included time-stamped development logs, showing his original innovation, his early patent filings, meticulously detailed financial transfers that demonstrated Zephyr's embezzlement, and even, chillingly, recordings of Zephyr's own private admissions of fraud, which the man had quietly secured long before his betrayal was complete, a digital fail-safe he had put in place the moment he suspected Zephyr's true, treacherous nature. He hadn't trusted him, not fully, not with his life's work. His foresight, his meticulous planning, had paid off in a way Zephyr could never have anticipated. Zephyr stammered, his words catching in his throat, his eyes darting frantically around the room, searching for an escape that simply didn't exist. His grand unveiling had become his grand unraveling, a public execution of his carefully constructed lies. The world watched, captivated, as his triumphant laughter turned into desperate, unheard pleas, his empire crumbling around him in real time. The aftermath was swift and absolute, an avalanche triggered by a single, carefully placed stone. The moment the man's calm voice had cut through the air, the instant that QR code had flashed on the screen, Zephyr's carefully constructed empire began to crumble, not with a bang, but with the sickening sound of snapping foundations. The murmurs in the audience quickly escalated into a frenzied buzz, then outright shock. People, initially disbelieving, their faces contorted in a mix of horror and fascination, were now frantically scanning the code, their eyes widening as they scrolled through the irrefutable evidence. The secure, immutable distributed ledger meant the data was untamperable, publicly verifiable, and damning beyond any reasonable doubt. There was no denying it, no spinning it away. Zephyr, once the picture of composure and unshakable confidence, was now a pathetic, quivering figure, his hands shaking uncontrollably, his eyes wide with a desperate, hunted look. He tried to speak, to defend himself, but only choked sounds emerged, unintelligible whispers lost in the rising clamor. His grand stage, meant for his ultimate triumph, had become his gallows, his carefully curated image shattering into a million pieces. The media, initially caught off guard, descended like vultures, their cameras flashing, microphones thrusting forward. Reporters, who just moments before had been diligently jotting down Zephyr's triumphant boasts, were now bombarding him with accusatory questions, their phones recording every agonizing second of his humiliation. His so-called allies, the investors and board members who had blindly backed him, began to distance themselves with alarming speed, their faces betraying a mix of panic and disgust. Some slipped away quietly, melting into the receding crowd, others openly expressed their dismay and profound regret, not for the man, but for their own now compromised investments. The stock price of Zephyr's company, displayed on financial news feeds across the globe, plummeted in real time, a graphic, undeniable representation of his catastrophic downfall. The man remained calm, a quiet observer of the chaos he had so meticulously orchestrated. There was no overwhelming joy in his heart, no visceral, vengeful satisfaction. Only a quiet sense of completion, of justice meticulously served. When approached by the clamoring reporters, he spoke clearly, concisely, and without emotion. He presented the unvarnished facts, outlined the technological superiority and ethical underpinnings of his new platform, and reiterated his unwavering commitment to ethical innovation. He didn't gloat, he didn't condemn Zephyr with harsh, vindictive words, he simply let the irrefutable evidence speak for itself, a testament to truth. His focus was not on Zephyr's ruin, but on the future he was building, a future founded on integrity and genuine progress. Within hours, official investigations were launched. The man's detailed, pre-prepared evidence, meticulously organized, cross-referenced, and time-stamped, made their work remarkably easy, providing a clear roadmap to Zephyr's deceit. The authorities moved swiftly, freezing assets and initiating comprehensive legal proceedings. Zephyr, once untouchable, found himself stripped of everything he had stolen, and more. His reputation, once meticulously crafted and publicly adored, was now in tatters, replaced by public scorn, legal liabilities, and a looming criminal record. His empire, built on deceit and exploitation, collapsed under the crushing weight of its own rotten foundation. Those who had ridiculed the man, who had called him a washed-up has-been, now offered sheepish apologies or, more frequently, expressed a newfound, almost reverent admiration for his resilience and strategic brilliance. Their pity had turned to respect, their scorn to awe. But he accepted neither with particular interest. Their fleeting opinions, once painful, now held little sway over him. His path was his own, forged in the crucible of betrayal and rebirth. Months passed, evolving into a year, then two. The dust settled, and from the ashes of his past, something new and infinitely stronger had emerged. His new company, built on the unwavering principles of integrity, transparency, and genuine innovation, not only survived but thrived spectacularly. They redefined the industry, not by conquering, but by empowering, by putting users first. Their decentralized platform became the new standard, their ethical practices a beacon for others to follow. His team, the small, dedicated group who had believed in his vision when no one else would, became the core of a burgeoning movement, attracting top talent from across the globe, not with lavish promises, but with the profound satisfaction of building something truly meaningful and impactful. He found a different kind of success this time, deeper and more fulfilling. It wasn't about the grand titles or the public accolades, though those came naturally as the industry recognized his unparalleled vision. It was about the quiet satisfaction of knowing he had built something true, something that could not be stolen or corrupted, something that genuinely improved lives. He had reclaimed not just his company, but his sense of self, his profound purpose. He was no longer defined by Zephyr's betrayal, but by his own boundless capacity to rebuild, to innovate, to endure, to transcend. His days were filled with meaningful work, collaborative discussions with brilliant minds, and the quiet contentment that comes from living in absolute alignment with one's deepest values. Zephyr? His name became a distant echo, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and classrooms, a grim reminder of hubris and deceit. He faced the full, crushing consequences of his actions, his life mirroring the ruin he had inflicted upon the man, but without the man's inner fortitude, without the capacity to rise from his own self-made ashes. He became a forgotten footnote in the history of an industry he once sought to dominate through fraud and manipulation. His journey taught him a profound, enduring truth. True power isn't found in what one acquires, but in what one can meticulously rebuild from the ashes of devastation. It's not about the fleeting triumphs of others, nor the fickle public perception of one's worth. It's about the unshakable resilience within, the quiet strength that allows one to analyze, to plan, to execute, even when the world counts one out, even when the odds seem insurmountable. The greatest victories are often won in silence, meticulously orchestrated by a mind that refuses to be broken, by a spirit that refuses to yield. For anyone facing betrayal, defeat, or public ridicule, remember this: the end of one chapter is merely the beginning of another, a blank page upon which to write your true story. Your true strength lies not in what you possess, but in what you are capable of creating anew, with wisdom forged in the searing fires of adversity. Don't seek revenge, seek reclamation. Rebuild yourself, your vision, your future, brick by painstaking brick, and in doing so, you will achieve a triumph far more enduring than any fleeting victory. Do you agree with the man's philosophy that true power lies in rebuilding, not in acquiring? What kind of challenges do you think he faced in assembling his new, ethical team after his public downfall? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more immersive narratives like this one.